Hey, sorry for that cut. My phone decided to kill the battery. So, yeah, but we were talking about this single right here called "He's a Whore," based on Cheap Trick. This is both cover songs that they did. Big Black did covers occasionally, and when they did, it was actually pretty good. This is a great cover, great version of a really good Cheap Trick song. It was when Cheap Trick was more punk than they were anything. Yeah, fantastic track, fantastic cover. Love the homage on the front. That's great. And the B side is the first track on Songs About Fucking, which is the model. Well, it's technically the second track. The first track is an opener. But yeah, you can see them looking like the guys from Kraftwerk. Very faithful photograph. The model. This is a slightly different edit version. It's got a slightly different mix to it, which is fine. It still sounds really good. It's a really cool cover. A lot of the appeal from these came from the actual fact that they were recreating the band look. And I think the Kraftwerk one looks exceptionally good. Yeah, put the guy there. Now, we get into their legendary record that everybody praises. Songs About Fucking. This album is notorious with fans because, like, it was notorious when it came out just from the title, Songs About Fucking. It was a controversial record when it came out, and they actually had to black it out. Put stickers over it and all that because people are offended by the F word, you know. I also love this record because it's one of the first actual American records to use an anime sort of style on it. You can see the back there is a little, a little suspect, but we won't talk about that. Yeah, this was, for a last record, this is fantastic. But, yeah, the Power of Independent Trucking is the first track, which is fantastic. Then we, of course, have the cover of The Model, this is the best version of it in my opinion, even better than the 45 mix. Bad Penny, which is a great sort of punky, very bassy, heavy song that is just, the bass is really killing it on this. Dave Riley works overtime on this record, essentially. This and Headache, I think, was Dave Riley's, shining moment. El Dopa, which is a fantastic song. One of their, really, really fast-paced punch to the point records. Or songs, sorry. Precious Thing is pretty good. That's a more slow, down-tempo, sort of really almost dub-like song. And then we have Colombian Necktie, which, funny enough, I think Ministry was inspired by this song to make The Missing. It sounds very similar to The Missing. This was during Al and Paul Barker, Al Jorgensen and Paul Barker were at the show that we'll talk about in a second. So I do believe, honestly, this record was a big influence on Ministry. If you can't tell, I like Ministry. B-side, we got Kitty Empire, Ergot. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say instrumental tracks on here, but there was a lot of, filler tracks, I guess you could say. So you got Kitty Empire, Ergot. Ergot's great. Really slow, very, grueling sounding, essentially. Kashmir-esque Polsky Day, which is great. Fish Fry, which is a really fun track. That's another very punk track with really heavy guitar editing. Pavement Saw, another sort of, slowed down, sort of space filler track, I guess you could call it. And Tiny, King of the Jews, another great song that is a good closer. And then Bombastic Intro, which is the last track on the record. So yeah, I'm not as crazy about this album as everybody else is. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad record whatsoever. This is an amazing record that I believe every person who's a fan of punk in the 80s should listen to. This was before punk turned into pop punk, this is the same year Green Day formed, I'm just going to put it that way. This was the same year Green Day was formed, and it is really the catalyst for the last great punk rock record or noise record, whatever you want to call it, That dying breed of Rima and all that stuff. It was this, and I think that this album is a good sign of that. And it's a wonderful album, so please go listen to this Atomizer and just listen to Big Blast's entire discography. You don't have to start out with Lungs. You don't have to start with it. You can just start with it. That's the good thing about Big Black. You can start wherever you want, and you won't be confused. They were consistent. They were very, very consistent with their releases. I wouldn't say they repeated themselves, but they kept a style all their own that made them still relevant. And this was the last record by Big Black, because there was multiple reasons, but the main reason was Santiago Durango wanted to partake in a law career instead of a musician career. He felt musicianship hadn't really got him anywhere. So he wanted to become a lawyer. So, and Steve Albini felt he couldn't continue the band without Santiago because he said, in his own words, Santiago's a better guitar player than me, and I couldn't really figure it out without him. And Dave Riley also was having some substance problems. He was he would drink a lot, not to the point where he couldn't play or something like that, but he would mainly just do it afterwards, and Steve thought it wasn't good for his health. And unfortunately, after this, he would suffer a stroke that would leave him paralyzed, and in 2019 would pass away from cancer after having a stroke for 20-something years and not being able to use part of his body. And it really was a shame and a loss for the punk community. Very good bass player, very talented bass player who really did carry this band, because this band is mainly focused on bass and drums. The guitars, the guitars are an important part of Big Black. They were sort of added afterwards, if that makes any sense. Now, we got one last record to talk about, and I feel like it's also a very important record, Pig Pile. This was Big Black's live record. There was also a VHS release of this that's fantastic. There was also a Laserdisc, if I'm correct. It's like really crazy clear quality. Yeah, this is basically it's a greatest hits of Big Black record, but it's live. Let's put it that way. And it's an amazing live, it really is. Some of the best versions of these songs are on here, like Dead Billy, Steelworker. It's just, some really classic tracks, really good cover arts. And yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that Big Black did that I don't have on hand. So there was the Sound of Impact Live, which was released in the mid-'80s. That's very muffled quality. It sounds like it was recorded on a cell phone or something like that, of cell phones that existed in 1986. And it has become synonymous. And also, with that live, they didn't have any of their actual names of the tracks on there. It was all just names of... it was just like filler name tracks, and they didn't have the name Big Black written anywhere. So it was really made just for people who could identify Big Black. It wasn't made for people who were like trend chasing or something like that. Not that Big Black were a trend. Yeah, so that's one of the only things I don't have. There was the Burning Indian Wife single, which was released with a B-side of another band. It was released for a magazine, I think, I want to say. Burning Indian Wife's a great song, so I should track that down sometime. It's not that hard to find on Discogs, so I should try to track that down. And then there was, with the VHS release of Pig Pile, there was a clear 45 of the song In My House by the Mary Jane Girls, but covered by Big Black, and it is actually a pretty fun cover, so. And then there was I believe, I don't want to say it was Reflex Magazine, it wasn't Reflex Magazine, it was another sort of fanzine back in the 80s, song. It was a cover of Rayma Rayma, called Rayma Rayma, because Rayma Rayma had their own title track. If you don't know who Rayma Rayma is, go listen to them, but they were a British experimental post-punk noise band who only made like 2 records and then broke up. They didn't even last like 2 years. I think they barely lasted a year. But yeah, Rayma Rayma are very influential, especially on Big Black. So they did a cover of the song Rayma Rayma, and it's a really good cover, but it is incredibly hard to find in good condition. You'll be paying like $400 for it because it was a single release with a magazine. Not that many of them exist probably. But yeah. And then, is there anything else I'm forgetting? Not that I'm aware of, honestly. Well, there was VHS tapes, of course. I already mentioned Pig Pile, but there was also one last VHS tape that they put out for their last ever show in Seattle, Washington, which has now become legendary. There's a lot. The live performance is on YouTube if you want to go watch it. It's called Big Black: The Last Blast, and it is their last ever live show that they did up until like 2006. And you can see. And funny enough, Kurt Cobain is in the audience of that show, which I always thought was funny. Yeah, it's a good live show too. It really is. It's pretty well shot. Not Pig Pile levels of quality, because Pig Pile was at the Odeon Hammersmith in London, so they had like a professional camera crew filming them, much like Venom did in the mid '80s. Venom had played at the bigger venue next to it a few years prior, and that was a fantastic live. But yeah, go check out Last Blast, and if you can find it for cheap, get it. The VHS tapes aren't getting terribly hard to find for Big Black, but they are rare. I'm not going to say they're easy to find, but they're rare. And of course there were bootlegs of Big Black, but I don't really collect those. Anything else? Any final thoughts? Well, I guess we should talk about Big Black's last ever performance. Pig Pie, the show in Seattle was their first official last performance as a band that would tour and all that and play regularly. But in 2006, Big Black reunited for one night only. For one night only. It was for the 25th anniversary of Touch and Go Records. So it was the Racer X lineup. Because unfortunately, like I said, Dave Raleigh had suffered a stroke and was not able to play. And it was for 25th anniversary of Touch and Go, and it was Steve Albini, Jeff Pizzati, and they've even got Santiago Durango back. So it was them three, and they played a few tracks. There's a live video, but they only play 2 songs in that live. They play Cables and Racer X. But apparently there were more songs that they had played, but you had to be there to actually hear them. So I was thinking of but you actually had to be there to hear them. And I think there's like one video that leaked, because I mean it was 2006, mobile phones weren't unheard of with having cameras, but they were expensive, and they weren't really good quality. But there are videos out there that do exist with that show. And that has been the last time Big Black has ever played. Now, though, recently Albini did do a very long interview discussing the history of Big Black and a lot of what went into the making of the albums and all that, and what was used to record it. And it's a very long interview, and it's on YouTube. So if you just look up Steve Albini interview, you'll see it, and it's just says Big Black in big bold letters underneath his face. A part of me really does wish that he would do a reunion tour with Big Black. I mean, I even asked Jeff Pizzati, and he doesn't even really have a straight answer on whether it would ever happen or not. So, I mean, people can hope. But, just, don't hold your breath. Albini isn't really that proud of that period in his career. Even he's come out and said, I kind of regret some of the very iffy decisions I made when doing that band. Some of the really offensive stuff that I said when being in that band. And Albini has done some very iffy stuff in his music career. There's a catalog compilation with a band he said that he did, which which it's obviously him doing it, but I don't think he ever officially attached his name to it. But that I can't say the name of. I'll just say Run and Run. And the song called "Pray I Don't Kill You." Slang word for homosexual. Yeah, so, and, of course, the other band he did, called Rape Men, that's the name of the band, Rape, which was a pretty successful band all on their own, but it was really just, that offensive cloud chasing that Albini was known for back then, with the name like that for a band. And, Rape Men's okay, but I wasn't a huge fan of him, I thought he was just, overly trying, and plus some of the music really wasn't terribly good. And then he came back with Shellac, which was much more well-received, and Shellac was actually, pretty well-received by the public. It was actually pretty, you could just pick up and listen to Shellac. It's not like Big Black, where, it does kind of take a certain kind of person to listen to this, because it's very noisy music. Shellac just sounds like, straight-up punk. It's just a really casual punk band. I mean, you can go into Zoomies and probably hear, well, actually, no, they don't play punk music in Zoomies anymore, because Zoomies now goes towards the mumble rapper market. So, probably wouldn't hear it in Zoomies now, but Zoomies 10 years ago, yeah, you'd probably hear it in Zoomies. But yeah, now, Albini doesn't even really play music anymore. He just produces and does videos on YouTube for interviewees. So yeah, but that was my video talking about my Big Black collection and how much I like this band. It's been kind of a boring video, but, for whoever's gonna watch it, thank you. I appreciate it. Now, before we end this video, I wanted to tell about some people who inspired me to make this kind of content, where there's no editing, I'm just sitting here on my couch talking to you guys. When I was younger, YouTube was just like this. It was just people sitting down talking to the camera, and, no big fancy schmancy editing or something like that. So a few YouTubers, Tolstoy Kafkaevsky, who was a pretty popular YouTuber in the early 2010s, doesn't really upload anymore, unfortunately. He did the same kind of content where he would just sit and talk to the camera. But there was a few new YouTubers who do this kind of content, especially record-wise, that really inspired me to do this video today. One of them being Derek Vaughn, who is this gentleman who just sits down daily uploads about records, and he's a musician, very talented musician, might I add. And he does these fantastic videos just talking about records and, you know, the politics in the world today and everything that's happening around us and how they're affecting the world. And he has good opinions on things. Well, I mean, good opinions. I side with a lot of things he says. And another one is Occasional Feel Good. Occasional Feel Good. You know, his videos are so entertaining, but so simple, and he just sits there and talks about any kind of music. Industrial, you know, he'll go from Ministry and Skinny Puppy to Kraftwerk to Nights Are Ebb to The Happy Mondays, you know, and Aphex Twin, you know, Aphex Twin is what got me into electronic music, so to hear somebody talk about Aphex Twin as enthusiastically as I do is really cool. And, you know, just, you know, this very casual feeling when watching these videos is what like really makes them nice. It makes you feel like this person's talking to you, like you're having like, you know, it's just really entertaining to watch, and it feels very personal. It doesn't feel overblown or like a bloated video or something like that. It just feels like, you know, it just feels like a casual video. It feels like YouTube from like 15 years ago when I was a kid, you know, and I really do miss that feeling. So doing videos like this, I'm going to try to do more of. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to do edited videos with music in the background and all that, and proper videos. And I even want to get into some analyses, documentary videos pretty soon. Video essays, if you will. I really want to do one on Skinny Puppy. But, you know, just got to get my softwares together and all that in a proper editing rig. Because my Mac is nice, but it's a 2007 iMac, and I don't get the latest iOS, so I can't use any editing software. So yeah, there's that. But hopefully, expect more really good quality video. Expect more of these types of videos in the future, especially about records or CDs or whatever. You know, I would really love to do a video on my Ministry collection, but that would take like an hour. That would take an hour and a half long video, and I don't have that kind of time. But yeah, I think we'll end it here. I hope you people had a good chance to hear me ramble about a band that hasn't really done anything in 16 years. But you know, it means a lot to me that, you know, if you do watch this. So. Just wanted to say thank you, and I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I hope your life is good.